You talk to people who are expert computer users, they are so bloody powerful, it is just beyond belief.
If you don't have a goal, a transcendent goal, say, something that's beyond you, then you don't have any positive emotion. And that's not good because you have plenty of negative emotion.
Before you can be a painter who can paint what's beyond mere memory, you have to inculcate that discipline skill, and a lot of that is painful repetition and hard grinding work. It's the sacrifice of the present for the future. But once you manage that, then things open up.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 and 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 and 9. This one's for my top 10.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with #BelieveNation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and this channel was created to help you overcome the #1 challenge that is holding you back, a lack of belief in yourself. You watch these videos because you know there's something more inside you too. You have Michael Jordan level talent at something. So get ready to value your time, structure your life, and treat yourself properly with Jordan Peterson and my take on his top 10 rules of success to give you the confidence, motivation, and belief that you need. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Keep up with innovations.
I made a decision when the computers started to become omnipresent, and so that would have been about 1993, that I was going to spend a year, and that was the first year that I was teaching in Boston, pretty much doing nothing but figuring out how Intel 486s worked. And it meant there was a lot of other things that I had to put on hold, but I did become a competent computer user, and I'm pretty fast. But, you know, my son, it's just annoying as hell to watch him on the computer and on the phone and my graduate students as well, because they're so much faster than me that it's not even funny, and I'm not really accustomed to being slower than someone else in the room. And so, you know, if I had children now, the one thing I would bloody well make sure that they knew was how to use a computer, how to program, man. Because if you're smart and you can use a computer, you are so much smarter than you are if you're just smart that it's not even funny. You know, and you talk to people, you see this in Silicon Valley all the time, you talk to people who are expert computer users, they are so bloody powerful, it is just beyond belief. So, and that's going to do nothing but expand, right? Because Moore's law is not dead, and computers are doubling in power every 18 months, and who the hell knows where that's going to go.
Rule number 2, value your time.
I don't know what percentage of human effort is spent in counterproductive activity. You know, I'm not an absolute cynic about that, but I mean, when I talk to undergraduates, I ask them, you know, how much time do you waste every day by your own reckoning? And it's somewhere between 5 and 8 hours. You know, it's a lot of time. Well, I usually walk the students through an economic analysis of that. I said, well, you know, why don't you value your time at $50 an hour and calculate for yourself just exactly what you're doing to your future by your inability to discipline yourself. It's worth thinking through. In any case, people do waste a lot of time, and they also act counterproductively a lot of the time.
Rule number 3, structure your life properly.
The other thing you should do if you're not very industrious is discipline yourself. And so what do you do with that? Eat 3 times a day at regular meal times. That's a good thing to practice, because that starts to put some stability into your life. Get up at the same time. I would highly recommend all those young people out there who are listening, like, you want to get a jump on life, get the hell out of bed in the morning. You know, as I've got older, I've got up earlier and earlier. Now that's partly because you don't need as much sleep, but it's also partly because I've got more and more disciplined. Like, get up early in the morning and get your things done. Man, learn to get up at 6 in the morning and you'll be one deadly creature, especially if you can get to work. You'll have half your damn day done by the time other people haul their sorry asses out of bed. And so that's a massive, massive advantage. Look, Warren Farrell, not the comedian, Warren Farrell, the author, he outlined data in Why Men Earn More, which is a book I would recommend, by the way, showing that if you work 13% longer hours, you make 40% more money. It's nonlinear. So you think, why is that? Well, imagine you had 10 employees and one of them works an extra 10%. It's not much. Well, how often is that person going to be promoted, assuming you have a clue as a boss? It's like you're going to look at the 10 people and you're going to think, oh, that guy's always here like 45 minutes early. It's like, why don't we give him the promotion? Obviously, right? So these small edges that you can manage like that, work an extra 10% or extra 13%, have non-proportional payoffs. That's part of the Pareto distribution. So get your sleep cycle organized so you get up in the morning. Learn how to do it. No excuses. I'm too tired in the morning. I don't like mornings. Who cares? That's not relevant. It's like discipline yourself so you can manage it. Schedule your meals, because that's a good disciplinary routine. And then learn to use a calendar, like Google Calendar. Most of you, many of you out there, do not use a calendar. Okay, a calendar is not a prison, and it's not a tyrant. Not if you use it properly. A calendar keeps anxiety at bay. It makes sure that you do what you need to do, which is important, because otherwise you fall behind. But if you use it properly, it also helps you plan what you want to do. So I could say, well, lay out your damn calendar and design the days you would like to have. That's what your calendar is for. So you can put in all sorts of things in there you want to do and that would be good for you. And that's a really good way to start being more industrious. Make a plan. You need a plan for 3 years. You need a plan for the next year. You need a plan for the next 6 months. You need a plan for the next 3 months. You need a plan for the week. You need a plan for the day. You need a plan for the hour. All of that. I make lists constantly of what I have to do. And they're like daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. Right now, I can't look out more than about 6 months, because my life is too complicated and chaotic. But you need a vision of who you could be, what character you could have. 3 to 5 years out, you can't go much farther than that because life is too unpredictable, I think, to make vision that's longer term than that subject to. There's too much chance associated with it to spend a lot of time on. Maybe you can stretch it to 5 years, and in rare cases, you can have a 10-year goal, but it has to be pretty low resolution. But you want plans at all those levels of resolution. You want to write the things down. And because what are you going to do? You're going to stumble around and get what you need? You're going to stumble around and be useful to other people? And it's useful to be useful to other people, They want to work with you then. They want to do things with you. They want to have you around. They trust you. They open up opportunities for you. And if you stumble around like you're blind, you're not going to get anywhere. And then you're going to suffer. And then you're going to be bitter. And then you're going to be cruel. So that's hell. That's a bad outcome.
Rule number 4, be prepared to make sacrifices.
Before you can be a painter who can paint what's beyond mere memory, you have to inculcate that discipline skill. And a lot of that is painful repetition and hard grinding work. It's the sacrifice of the present for the future. But once you manage that, then things open up. And virtually everything you learn of value is like that's very, very, very difficult to learn to write. And there's arbitrary rules that you have to follow and bind yourself to. And while you're learning those rules, the probability that you have any creative freedom to speak of or any facility with the rules is very low. You're a rank beginner. And even to some degree, whatever creativity you have is going to have to be stifled while you're passing through that keyhole. But if you pass through it, then something massive opens up on the other side. And it is definitely the case that disciplinary institutions, universities, are exactly that, is they're places of guidance and they're places to encourage people to develop the discipline that's necessary to see beyond the discipline. I mean, that's why we have disciplines, right? I mean, the words aren't there by accident. You have to narrow yourself first, and then you can broaden outward. And so that's part of the process of maturation. That's part of the sacrifice of childhood. Say, in childhood, you're nothing but potential, but it's not realized and you don't know how to realize it. And so then the question is, well, how do you get to a point where you realize the potential? And the answer is, you sacrifice almost all of it to a single direction. This is Nietzsche's commentary on the Catholic Church. He's a great admirer of the Catholic Church, despite the fact that he was also a radical critic of Christianity. He said, the thing about the Catholic Church is that it forced everything to be interpreted within a single explanatory framework. And that was a discipline. And once that discipline was established, then the disciplined mind could explode in every direction, which is precisely what happened. And so, and that's the thing about growing up, is that when you're a teenager and a young adult, you have to sacrifice everything you could have been as a child to be the one thing that you're aiming at. But then that opens up, and the universities are part and parcel of that process. And you need the guidance, because the library is too large to wander through it unaided.
Also, if you want to have more confidence, check out my 254 series. It's free. The link to join is in the description below.
If you're going to speak effectively, you have to know way more than you're talking about.
Rule number 5, have transcendent goals.
If you don't have a goal, a transcendent goal, say, something that's beyond you, then you don't have any positive emotion. And that's not good, because you have plenty of negative emotion. And that's the problem with fundamental claims of meaninglessness too in life, that it's the philosophical error that's made by nihilists, let's say, who say, well, life is meaningless. It's like, well, if you're a nihilist, genuinely, you've lost all hope. Your life isn't meaningless, it's just unbearably miserable. And that's a form of meaning. You know, that suffering is a form of meaning. And you can try to argue yourself out of that with your nihilistic rationalizations, but that is not going to work. You need a transcendent goal in order to withstand the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Rule number 6, treat yourself properly.
One of the things that distinguishes my work, say, from the work of someone like Ayn Rand, is that I make the case continually that there's no such thing as atomized individuality. And so, for example, if you're going to treat yourself properly, which you should, you have to treat yourself as an iterated process across time properly. So you today, you tomorrow, you next week, you next month, you when you're old. You're already a community if you're going to treat yourself properly. And if you treat yourself properly, you're going to take into account your family, and you're also going to take into account your community, all simultaneously. But the right place to start is with the things that are within your local control, and there's some humility in that. It certainly has nothing to do with instantaneous self-gratification or selfishness.
Rule number 7, discover your values.
Values aren't created, they're discovered. And they're discovered through a consultation with the parts of yourself that you're not conscious of, that you're not fully conscious of, that aren't articulated, that aren't fully articulated elements of your primary personality. You have to discover what your values are. And you're informed about that, well, partly by other people who will object if your values aren't appropriate, but certainly by a dialogue with yourself and with your conscience. That's a very important thing to know. It's part of the reason why I think that you need to tell the truth, because you're forced to negotiate with yourself to operate properly in the world. And if you've warped yourself, let's say, or some elements of yourself by engaging in self-deception and lies, and you're not now, because of that, you're not who you could be, and you don't live in the world as you should live in it, then when you discuss with yourself what your value should be, it will be as if you're discussing it with someone that you can't trust. And that's not good. Like, you can't afford that. Life is difficult, and it contains many pitfalls. And unless you're careful and you sort yourself out properly and you aim high and walk on the straight and narrow path, you don't have a hope of understanding where you should be and at what time when the crisis hits. And the crisis will hit.
Rule number 8, develop wisdom.
When I was a teenager, I did, God, if I had to write a book about the stupid things I did when I was a teenager, it'd be a very thick book. And it'd be a worse book if there were photographs accompanying it. But I had this advantage that young people today don't have, which was, well, when my day of stupidity was over, I could go home and it was not there. Like, it wasn't on Twitter, it wasn't on Facebook. There wasn't 20 of my friends communicating to me about, what foolish thing I did at the party the night before. And young people now, they're just followed by paparazzi, essentially, constantly. And I've watched that with the young teenage daughters of many of my friends, because my kids were a little too old for that to actually have happened to them. But God, it's miserable. And we know that there is some relationship between the amount of time people use Facebook, for example, and their mental health, which means the more they use Facebook, the more depressed they are. And it might be that the depression is driving the Facebook use, but the causal pathway seems to be the other way around, which is, it's just playing that unbelievably exposed social game. That's hard on people. And these aren't trivial technologies, I mean, they're transforming the way we communicate with one another, and they're completely uncontrolled experiments. We have no idea what the medium or long-term consequences are going to be. And we'll never find out either, because of course the communication landscape changes so quickly that by the time you get adapted to one communication technology, another one has come along that's even more confusing that you now have to master. And so, well, that's why it's necessary for everyone to develop their own modicum of wisdom, I believe, because I don't know how else we're going to be able to deal with this technological transformation that's going to is already coming across us like a tidal wave. And you ain't seen nothing yet. The people in Silicon Valley have plans that, well, that make you think that the whole place should probably be bombed just for the safety of the rest of us, because there's tremendous danger in that rapid acceleration of machine intelligence, and we have absolutely no idea where that's headed. So, and maybe it'll be great. It's possible that it'll be great, but power cuts both ways. So hopefully we can control it with our wisdom, and that's pretty much up to each of you to put your lives together so you can make good decisions.
Rule number 9, practice radical humility.
You can learn to kind of watch yourself like you're watching a stranger, but you have to adopt a position. It's a position of radical humility, I would say. Both humility in two senses. So one sense would be the humility of recognizing your ignorance. So you have to understand that you don't know who you are. And that's not easy to understand because you think you know. But then, you remember you can't control yourself very well. You're not very disciplined. You're full of flaws. Maybe you don't know yourself as well as you think. But it's hard to get low enough to understand how deeply it is the case that you are ignorant about who you are. Now, there's an upside to that too, which also is that you're also ignorant about who you could be. And so the discovery of that, is some reward for the horror of determining who you actually are.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is be fair.
People can tolerate inequality, so to speak, or even revel in it, let's say, if they believe that the unequal outcome is deserved. I mean, look at how people respond to sports heroes. No one goes to a sports event and boos the star, even though he or she is paid much better and attracts the lion's share of the attention, hopefully not in too narcissistic a manner. People can celebrate success, but they do have to believe that the game is fair, and the game needs to be fair, because otherwise the hierarchy becomes tyrannical.
Now I have a special bonus clip from Jordan Peterson on how to put your family first that I think you're gonna enjoy. But before that, it's time for the 3-point landing questions. Let's go from just watching a video to taking action. Here we go. Question number 1. What are your 3 most important core values? Number 2, how can you practice radical humility today? And number 3, how can you better structure your life? And if you made it this far in the video, I wanna celebrate you. Give me a hashtag believe down in the comments as well.
There's not that many things in your life that are of central importance. There's half a dozen, I would say. There's your friends, there's your family, your intimate partner. By family, I mean your siblings and your parents, but then there's your children, there's your career, there's your educational trajectory, there's how you take care of yourself and protect yourself from temptation, and what sort of useful things you do in the time that you're not working, but you know, children are a third of life, something like that, maybe more. And so I would certainly recommend that you don't miss it. It's complicated because, of course, now in most situations, both parents have to work, and but it's always been complicated to raise children. They're a long-term investment, but yeah, right. Which is hard. That's why it's hard to even pay childcare workers, right? Because the payoff for having a child doesn't occur until 2 decades later, or sometimes 4 decades later. But it's not something you want to miss, that's for sure, because it's well, that's life, you know. It's part of the human condition, and little children pay you back immensely if you have a good relationship with them, you know, if you're on their side and encourage them, because they're an unconditional source of joy and love.
Powerful.
You know, the other thing I noticed that you should all know is that as you get older, your family, the family you've produced, becomes more and more important. You know, so we teach young women in particular that the fundamental goal of their life is going to be their career. And, you know, first of all, most people don't have careers, they have jobs. And those are very different things. But you're not a very happy camper, so to speak, if you're 45 and you have no one, and it doesn't go upwards after that. So don't miss it.
If you want 10 more rules from Jordan Peterson, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Stop doing the things that you know are wrong. Make a damn schedule and stick to it.
Sometimes, you know, I can't sleep at night because I'm thinking about something, and